I wouldn't say it's so much thinking positively. I think it's more having a solution focused approach. Because if
Hmm.
we have a look at what we tend to do when we're in that mindset, whether it's beating ourselves up because we're not good enough for the world or blaming the world because we're in a particular position, until we've kind of worn ourselves out and looked at every single possible scenario we could possibly get through this, if we keep going around like that, we're not going to find the answers we seek. And it isn't so much as saying, right, okay, you're in a real tough time and I expect you to sit there and bring in positivity. The last thing we're going to do is that. But at the
Hmm.
same time, what this is realizing, okay, I've been here before. How do I keep going around in this cycle? What can I change within this moment now?
Today, we are welcoming Garon Green, who is an NCPS qualified counselor for anxiety, depression, grief, and addictions in the UK. And boy, does he have a story. And thank you so much, Garon, for being so vulnerable and willing to share your story, because I know your story and wisdom is going to help give others hope and encouragement that we so desperately need in this world so that they can overcome some of these things too. So you've dealt with homelessness, cocaine addiction, abandonment. You got pretty close to taking your own life. Some really, really dark, tough stuff. And yet you are a living example of lasting triumph over evil. You are now free of addiction. You have a thriving counseling business, and your experiences give you that depth of understanding that allows you to help others who are dealing with some of these things. So to start, will you tell us where your mindset was when you were struggling, what got you there in the first place, and what kept you there for so long?
Well, it's quite hard going back to journey because there's kind of two sorts of aspects of how I dealt with things in life in regards to challenges ahead. One being the counsellor and one not being the counsellor. And I go back to the time of when it all first started off for me. I started reducing from taking the cocaine, which I was taking, to the point I massively isolated myself. And at that particular time, I had my best friend passed away from a motorbike accident, and that really hit me hard. And throughout my time through addiction, I lost a lot from my friends through either overdoses or suicide, which was quite tough to swallow. I myself had enough of my cocaine problem to the point I looked around me and had this kind of reality check of who am I? Who are these people around me? What am I doing with my life? To the point I completely had enough. Felt massively isolated, and I think when we go to that dark place, one of the hardest things is being alone and having someone to be there. And the harsh reality truth, there was no one there for me. There was countless people I helped in the past, and when it was my turn, nobody was there, and that hurt. That did hurt. At that stage in my life, I become more resentful towards the world. Instead of working with where I was more resentful of why am I in this position, why do people turn their back on me, I'm a terrible person, etc., beating myself up to the point I remember being on a railway line back in 2010, pretty much hoping this train was going to take me out. And would I say courage or was I a coward? To this day, I still question that. I got off the lines and the train went past me, and I remember punching the stones on the railway line, and I was that frustrated that I couldn't take my own life. I was a wimp. I was a coward. I
Mm.
didn't even have the courage to do that. I was an angry guy, really angry guy after that particular moment, and I carried that for a while, and that's when I went into isolating myself. Somebody who was quite happy going in and out and about, even travelling on my own. I had no worries with that whatsoever, to somebody who in which I moved into, and I locked myself away for nearly 6 months in my parents' spare bedroom.
Wow. The isolation that you mentioned is kind of the pivotal marker for a lot of dark places that people find themselves in. That's kind of a similar thread throughout all of the stories that I hear, is just feeling very alone. I'm of the belief from a Christian mindset that that is the goal of the darkness, is to get us to that place where we feel alone and hopeless enough that we stop trying, that we give up all hope and we despair enough that we never make it back. And yet you did. And I feel like it's somewhat rare. I was listening to someone else talk about a cocaine addiction on another podcast, and they went to a rehab clinic, and he was dubbed the least likely to succeed by the people there.
Sure.
And he was the only one of 5,000 people that went through that clinic at that time who turned it around and never came back. So it's got to take some, I don't know, grit, decision. I mean, there's usually some kind of moment of decision where you decide, I can't do this anymore. I'm never going back.
Mm.
to be able to actually succeed. It can't be a maybe. It can't be I'll try. It has to be 100%. Would you say that that's correct?
Well, yeah, for you to make the change, because again, with any form of addiction, we can lapse or relapse, and normally 9 times out of 10, most people do, and that's what I tend to say to people: expect to have that happen, and that's where we learn and we become more resilient. I
Mm-hmm.
myself, I wasn't fortunate enough. I had no money or anything at the time, so there was no way me going to rehab. I definitely wouldn't have been able to afford it. And I generally had enough of my addiction. I did just stop. I had no help whatsoever from anybody with my addiction. I generally had
Wow.
enough. That was when I had a look for seeking support. I spoke to my mum at the time and I said to her, I said, you know, I failed. I need to get help. I really need to get help. So it took me a while, for about 6 months, to get the courage to go and see a doctor to say,
Mm-hmm.
I need to break out of these four walls. When I went to the first doctor, it's a bit of a reality check. I went in there and spoke to this particular female doctor, and when I told her that I was sat on a railway line, believe it or not, Jennifer, she actually sniggered at me. Uh, which again, I can relate to the person you heard on the podcast, people putting that person down, saying, well, they're going to fail. Well,
Putting you in a box. Almost like, huh. I've had that happen to me on lesser levels, I suppose, different things, but oh, it hurts. Oh, it
yeah,
hurts
I
so
mean,
bad. That snicker. I mean, it says a lot. And maybe they don't mean it that way. I don't know. But the way that I interpreted it, it hurt.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like yourself, I was walking around very angry, and years back, it would have been highly likely I'd have probably been arrested and, well, let's just say damaged the room we were in. But I
Mm.
didn't. I walked away. That's when I inquired to have a look for some therapy support, and at the time there was some support there, and I thought, being a guy, we don't need any help because we know it all, and I thought I'll give it a try. Someone must be able to listen to me or point me in the right direction.
I've even thought that as a woman before. I'm
Hmm.
a pretty strong woman,
Yeah, of course.
but
Yeah.
I know everything already that they're going to tell me. Why would
Hmm.
I pay them for advice? I wish I could change myself. I know these things, but
Yeah.
them telling me again isn't going to change the way I feel. That's a
Hmm.
lot of the
Hmm.
things that would go through my head.
Sure, sure. And we do, we become quite, that's kind of part of us being defensive, because when we get support, we do make ourselves vulnerable. We're, let's be honest, telling people who we don't know our darkest secrets. Anxiety and depression, as you know, can work together quite well. And the depression of pulling myself to go to the appointment, and the anxiety peaking up when I was driving there. I mean, I had to pull over a few times, and I'm not going to lie, I heard of anxiety. I heard about panic attacks, but I'd never experienced one before. I pulled over about 5 or 6 times because all this anxiety and panic. I thought I was having a heart attack at one point, but
Yeah.
something kept me going.
Well, that's incredible because, again, the Christian way I look at it, I believe that the darkness works on our fear and uses fear to try to get us not to do the things that will help us the most. And so when I'm really scared, I've learned that that's the way. It's the
It's
thing I'm afraid
interesting.
of. And so you driving to the therapist and the darkness throwing all this stuff at you like, oh no, you shouldn't go.
Yeah.
She'll hate you. She'll think you're so stupid. She'll snigger again.
Oh,
All those
100%.
things and trying to scare you out of doing the one thing they knew would help you the most.
Yeah,
That's
I find
kind of
out.
the scenario I see happening with a lot of anxiety is stop this person. Don't let them make progress.
I find that really interesting, your view on that, and it's very similar to how I look at things. There's different times when I've been in tough times, I look up and I'm like, seriously? So I have an
Help.
argument. I'm like, seriously, not
Me
today.
too.
Yeah, so I mean, I can relate to your approach there. I find that really interesting. How many of us have that barrier of fear in front of us, and how scary is it to step across that barrier? But the only way we're going to find out the truth and find our answers is when we have the courage to step beyond that barrier of fear. That's where we truly discover our answers, which is a scary move to make for many of us. Unless the darkness comes out and it convinces us the best it can to say, well, avoid and run for the hills. And something inside, you're like, well, actually, no, I'm going to turn around and face you this time.
You went to that appointment, which was
Yeah.
kind of a pivotal experience for you from what I've heard in your other podcast.
When I got there and the therapist was there, it was really interesting. I'm not going to lie, I had all sorts going through my mind when I sat in that waiting room. I always get anywhere early if I can.
Mm.
And those 15 to 20 minutes felt like hours because I had so much going through my head, interpreting, fortune telling. I was having all these cognitive distortions going on. And I always remember I sat there and I chuckled a bit because the door opened. And reflecting back now, my stomach dropped. It's kind of like jumping on a roller coaster ride when she opened that door. But I'm glad I walked through it. I'm glad I
Hmm.
walked through it.
What I remember you also saying was that you were kind of put out because you're like, oh, a woman? I wanted to talk to a man who can understand me. What can this woman possibly know about what I'm going through? This does not look like a woman who can help me.
I
Yeah, like
did.
you're just like, oh, what have I done? And but then she said something to you in that appointment that kind of made you angry at first, right?
Like you said, when I saw her, I'm instantly judgmental guy straight away. And she was quite a bit younger than me. And I think, geez, lady, what I've got in here, you're not going to cope with. And that's where I was with my mind. And one partly embarrassed to speak to a woman about my problems. We made some progress, and she was using some CBT on me at the time. And
CBT being cognitive behavioral therapy.
yeah, that helped a little bit with challenging my thoughts, which was really good. And you form a relationship with your therapist because you're on that journey together and you do go through the ups and downs. And she was making progress. I always remember she said, "What's your room like at your parents' house?" And I'm not gonna lie, Jennifer, it threw me off. I was like,
Huh?
"What do you mean?" Like,
What does
and
that
she
have
was
to do
like,
with anything?
"Oh yeah," instantly I'm like child mode. What am I, 16 years old? I know how to tidy my room. So my head was defensive straight away, and
Mm-hmm.
I left the session really pissed off and
Mm-hmm.
put out. I was annoyed. I was like, what am I, bloody 16 again? I know how to tidy my bedroom. And I always remember it was really weird. Mind you, I was in between getting myself outside, going for nighttime drives that helped build my confidence with the depression and anxiety. Because as we
Mm-hmm.
know, we go into that comfort zone and trying to pull ourselves out of that comfort zone bubbles quite hard. And I remember sitting in my room and I had a lot of studio stuff. It wasn't dirty or anything like that, it just disorganized chaos. And this was the next day after therapy. So I had all my cables everywhere, and I remember sitting down and looking, and I was like, I suppose I could actually clear these cables because they have been like that for a little while. And I started doing it. And like what a book you recommend, I've ordered that book by the way.
A Monk's Guide to a Clean House and Mind.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. And it was really interesting. I started clearing my room, and I done one corner, and I bounced onto the other ones. And when you're stuck in that isolation stage in depression of tidying your room, let's be honest, it's just as equivalent as climbing a mountain. The amount of effort it takes to pull yourself out of that hole and have that traction, that motivation. Do you feel it now? Gosh, it feels so long ago. I see my clients do this now. I was really proud of what I put together, just tidying that small part of my room. And eventually I'd done the whole lot. And that's going from somebody who couldn't even walk to the local shops. 5, 10 minutes walk. I'd get halfway, bang, the anxiety peak. Turn around, jump back into my comfort zone, close my bedroom door and hind away from the world. And it was really interesting what I've learned with people over time, especially with some people who go to rehab and people I've worked with throughout my career. People always say about this tidy room creates a tidy mind. And when I've said that to different work colleagues, and I've done 16 and a half years of working in the homeless sector to addictions to where I am now in therapy, and many colleagues have had a similar background to me. That's why some of us do the work we do. Generally said, we all agree on that. Some of them learned that in rehab, and I thought, how interesting that something so simple can spring us into something so big.
Yeah.
And as you know yourself, it's getting that motivation to be able to do it. And that is probably one of the hardest transitions I ever had to make.
Yeah. It really is. I was kind of on the opposite end where the depression and the anxiety that I dealt with, it was pivotal for everything to be perfect, or I couldn't function very well. I really needed that order, so I was a little obsessive about things being clean and tidy to the point that if it wasn't, I was out of sorts. It would stress me out to the point of being more anxious and angry and depressed. So that was kind of a lifeline for me. My parents had more than one child, and the house was often messy, but they made sure I had my own room, my own space, so that I could keep it clean and I could go in there if I needed to and just kind of shut the door and have my space. I wonder if that's why when I start making some aha moments of,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I can heal this? No way. That was already kind of in place, and I had to relax on it a little bit, because it was a kind of an unhealthy level.
Yeah.
But it was easier to move forward because I had that clean space, clean mindset, wanting to stay morally clean as well. I was raised with the idea that cleanliness is holiness, is being closer to God, and all of those things. Not to say that anyone has to have an immaculate house all the time, but that having that almost temple-like thought that the room that you're in, the reflection in it, can inspire the way you feel and think and move. And it makes it easier to get inspiration, I think, because there's not all of these distractions around you.
And I find that really fascinating. With yourself, you're kind of opposite with me. I call people like that, I said, the greyhounds who want to get everything done and fly through it really fast, where I was called kind of more slow down and isolate. But as you know, trying to pull that in the middle, whichever either side you're on, and creating that balance and maintaining that, as you know yourself, is really hard to do. So it's really well done for you to pull the reins back. And as you know, we're not perfect. We are humans. We are going to wobble sometimes. I know myself every so often. I call it my anxiety gremlin would jump on my back. But instead of me letting it overtake me and absorb me now, I'm aware when the triggers come there. I'm not saying I get it right all the time because I'm learning every day. But I'm becoming more aware of it over the years, especially as I call it the anxiety gremlin jumps on your shoulder and you know it's there. But what do we do in the past? We kind of ignore it. We think, oh, we just carry on. But now I turn around and face it. I'm like, right, okay, I'm aware of you now. Let's dance. Let's have a fight. So I do. I tend to challenge it more. I think that's why I'm becoming a qualified therapist. Kind of solution focused, really. Working with clients and giving the ideas. As you know yourself, sometimes we have to hit this stuff head on. We have to step across that barrier of fear, which is scary. But we learn.
Yeah. And gremlins can look kind of freakishly scary, especially if you look at the gremlin and it looks a lot like you.
Oh.
I don't think it's us. But again, that darkness wants us to think that we're ugly, wants us to think that we are the monster, and that there's nothing that can possibly change that. And there's even been times when this is a little out there, but I was reading a book about ancestors. And how ancestors' karma, ancestors that didn't quite get it. They passed on their problems to their offspring. And it's in our DNA and in the behaviors that we're taught. And they just never quite overcame those things. And then a lot of those are still here. And a lot of those are still connected to us. And that the book encouraged a process where you would look at yourself in the mirror. And you could do this with a therapist where they're looking at you. But if you wanted to do it on yourself, you would look at yourself in the mirror and just try to look straight into the eye and focus on that one eye. And what she described was that you'd often see dark outline or almost like a spirit that wasn't yours come out. And I thought, I'm not going to see anything, but I'll try it.
Yeah.
And I did it, and I looked in the mirror, and my face started looking old. And it started to almost like turn black, and I could see something outside of it. And I had to stop. I was like, oh my gosh, what's in there? And it wasn't me. And I knew it wasn't me. But I was like, okay, I have some more work to do. And this wasn't even, I want to say, a year ago. So there's layers and layers and layers. And I think people get discouraged when they hear of, oh my gosh, this is so much work. But time is a gift. And it doesn't have to be looked at as work as much as just interest, curiosity. What is this? Almost like Sherlock Holmes, like playing Clue and trying to figure it out. It doesn't have to be brutally hard to let things go. And letting things go, the whole connotation of that is let's make things easier for you. And I can say every step I've taken towards mental health and bettering my mental health, I thought, wow, this is the best I've ever felt. And then I'll reach that next level or a breakthrough and wow, this is the best I've ever felt. And it just keeps getting better. Not that I don't have downturns, because that's usually what inspires me to do some more work. But then the mountain I get to the top of after was better than the one I was on before, if that makes sense.
You hit the nail on the head. It was perfect to what you said in regards to the layers, because as we tear one layer across, we've got another one to explore. And we all have challenges every day and ups and downs. Welcome to life. But it's really interesting. You've given even myself a bit of insight in regards to looking at it as more of a journey. And even though I kind of interpret it a little bit different to yourself, with me, if a life scenario happens, I process quite quick. I'm very grateful for the tools I've learned with most therapists. These are ideas, these are theories, they're not facts. Some of them work wonderfully well, but it's turning around and facing this stuff. And when you get through it, that amount of relief you have, and some of us, we're not used to giving ourselves praises. And I found it really powerful that you faced the mirror. And I use very similar here in the UK, and I normally say to my client, eventually I want you to be able to go and face the mirror and be proud of who you see. So it's really interesting what you guys do over there in the States.
I can't say this is anything I learned in therapy. Most of the people that I have gotten help from are life coaches, religious, spiritual, energy healers of that sort. I had therapy when I was a child, and that was comforting. I liked that. I think that therapists are starting to cross over into that area where energy healing has been for a while. And that's been exciting for me to watch, because they're starting to use some of those modalities that are actually able to change those neural pathways and release people from the grip that addictions and all of these things have on them. So I think therapists and therapy is making big strides forward.
Sure.
Because sometimes it takes science a little while to catch up to spirituality. And I think spirituality can get kind of convoluted too. So you have to be careful either way. Choose your therapist wisely. How far do you go into spiritual? It can be an ugly place if you go too deep. You got to be wise and make sure you're aligned with the light and all of that. But
yeah, that's right. And I find that really fascinating. You're always exploring this. We're always learning. And I find it interesting what you say, because obviously I can only say what goes here in the UK, but I'm attuned to the likes of Reiki. I went down that route of spiritual understanding because when I was at that stage in my life, I was seeking something and I didn't know what. But it's interesting because it's become more accepted over here in the UK, more the spiritual element. It's like what you said there, and this is what I really admire about you, Jennifer, is you can go into this rabbit hole, but you have to be careful because you can push yourself too much with these things.
We need healing more than ever. So many people are suffering. So many people are sick.
Sure.
We need more people who understand and know their worth so that they can, in turn, help other people to do the same. It feels a lot like a losing battle right now. I look at Big Pharma and it makes me a little sick to my stomach because it's making things worse, not better. And most of the people that I know who are in depression are taking some form of antidepressant, which makes them not want to get help. I understand because I've taken it. I took it for 10 years. But on the other hand, it just makes people very complacent to the point that they're like, I'm good. And they just kind of stay there and it's mediocre. Mediocre is no way to live. I think a lot of people think this is the best I can get because what I had before was so much worse. But me being on the other side, you being on the other side, I'm telling you, it gets so much better if you're willing to have some faith and take the jump. And I'm not saying stop taking your medication today. Let a doctor help you with that. That could be disastrous. But there is a life that is so much more joyful with or without it before. I don't know if I said that right, but I think you know what I mean.
When I went down the route myself and I did try antidepressants, they generally didn't work for me. It's right that people do wean off their medication. They do not just stop. I think that can cause people more problems. You've got to remember you've got to change your mind process. So having those chemicals at the time, I think they can help to a certain extent. But if you are ready to take the leap of faith, let's be honest, we find answers once we do that.
Yeah, that's the journey part. And for some people, it gets worse before it gets better. But I would encourage anybody who's preparing to get off their medication to overdose on omega-3s like crazy. I mean, like big time. You're eating fish 3 days a week. You're taking an omega-3 every day. You're eating lots of nuts and seeds. That was the saving grace for me. That is why I was able to get off of it. I was deficient in healthy fats. Your brain needs healthy fats. So I can't say that's every single person, but I can say that most I've suggested that to who's done it, they noticed with or without the medication that it changed their anxiety level. It made them more calm and able to think. So just throwing that out there. Anyone who's thinking about weaning off with the help of a doctor, go crazy with the omega-3s. It can't hurt you. Let's just put it that way.
It's a healthy approach. Good on you. And you found your own wavelength. You.
An answer to a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Hooray. For you too. And with that said, I wanted to ask you a few more questions. What makes people resist vulnerability so much?
Isolation we go through, the lack of support, and it can feel quite immense. We're not used to being on our own, and we can go down the route of kind of internalized blame with ourselves. So while sometimes we can eventually move past it, there's a phase what we tend to go through, which can be a degree of self-blame, which again keeps us trapped. Or like I did many years back, blamed the world because of where I was. It's hard to go through that stage and process it, how we respond to our difficult reactions, but sometimes it can, really keep us from moving forward. So it's learning to deal with these one at a time. That's what I tend to say to many of my clients, is breaking this down. If we got a big cake in front of us, so to speak, we can't swallow the cake in one sitting. And it's the same as our thought processes. We try to understand it. We try to do it all at once. We go into fortune telling because we think this worst case scenario is going to happen. And as you know, we go through that spiral and we completely exhaust ourselves with that. So we learn to break this down into segments and we deal with one thing at a time. So again, we have that entrenched thought pattern. We're not good enough. Why did these people treat us this way? That's how we kind of defend ourselves, stand our ground, and it's our way we release these feelings. If we have a look at anger and frustration, for example, when it first kicks in and we don't really know how to control it, let's be honest, and the last thing we are going to do is look in that mirror and just say, right, that's all your fault. If everything you've done is your fault, we go externally, and then we can start blaming ourselves afterwards. So we stay stuck in that area for quite a while.
Seems like it's this preoccupation with blame. Someone must be to blame.
Yeah.
And just pointing fingers everywhere and then eventually pointing it back at yourself and it's all my fault. When fault's kind of beside the point. We're all imperfect people who make mistakes, and the mistakes that other people have made that have hurt me have given me opportunity to grow in ways that I couldn't have without them. And I've learned to be grateful for the people that hurt me for that reason. They gave me this experience. And I believe that karma is real. If some of these people have not changed, they will eventually. They'll have to. It's just kind of how it works, here or there, the other side. But it's not my job to hold on to the pain that they offered to me and suffer for it every day when you don't have to. That's just letting them win over and over and over again. Or rather, the darkness that caused them to do it in the first place, because I don't think anyone here actually wants to be a bad person. I don't think anybody, not even the worst of the worst. I don't know why or how they think. But if we don't let go of that, their karma will become our karma because we just won't let it go. And so if you can instead be grateful for the opportunity to learn or to experience something that will then give you the opportunity to help other people who've been through things that were equally as awful, you are then a blessing to others. I've learned to look at it that way. I'm not always successful, but I really try. I've really tried to forgive everybody and to move on and wish them the best. Like genuinely wish them the best. Again, not always easy to do when someone's hurt you and they don't apologize or they don't feel bad. I think that's the hardest. When someone apologizes, it's like easy peasy, you are forgiven, no worries, thank you for saying sorry. It's not as easy when they're still gloating or still continuing to try to hurt you, right?
Sure, and it's accepting what's happened. And as I say to people, I'm not saying what happened to you in your past is right, but there's generally nothing we can do about the past. We're never going to change that. But if we have a look at this in a more productive way, we grow. It's gaining that resilience and that confidence and grow from that. And these people have treated you wrong. We're human. We don't want to be hurt or any of those horrible feelings we can feel sometimes. But at the same time, it's letting it go because, again, the more we keep attached, the more we're going to keep them in our world. And the less of a chance we have a chance to progress. But we've got to make that transition into moving forward. And that transition and that acceptance is a real hard pill to swallow. But once we start learning to do that, we grow instead of being held back by the past.
Yeah. And I would add too, if you're in a situation where you're currently having to go to work with a toxic boss who makes your life a living hell on a daily basis, you have a choice. You have many choices. Oh, I don't have a choice. I have to work there. I've heard all of it, right? You have a choice. You can find another job. You can learn emotional resilience through this process that will allow you to go to work with someone trying to make it a living hell and make it into something that is fun and bearable because you change. You change. And kudos to anyone who can do that. That's hard when you're getting beaten down on a daily basis, but I've seen people do it. And it's incredible the person they become. It's like this battleground every day, and they get stronger and stronger and stronger. Or you can just get beat up every day. You can, I mean, that's happened too. So, and in that case, if you just can't take it, go somewhere else, figure it out. But if you're in a toxic marriage right now that you're not quite ready to get out of, or you're working on it, whatever these situations are, you have choices. You can change. I did it. I was in not the best marriage situation, and I got to the point, and it was because of my life coach at the time. She told me, you figure out how to be happy in the situation you're in, because if you don't, you're going to leave a messed up person and just go find another messed up person to share another messed up marriage with. It just wasn't a real great marriage. Emotionally, we just weren't getting along very well. So I was able to get to that point where I can genuinely say I was happy in what should have been a pretty miserable situation. And then I felt like, okay, I'm now in a place where I can make that choice. And I felt like I could leave.
Sounds like you built your resilience up to that and made that change for yourself. I didn't have the best of marriages myself many years back, unfortunately. It was violent on that other person's side of things, and it was tough. But again, what I learned from that was building my assertiveness, putting my boundaries in place, and looking at things like my I statements, what I require from things, and they weren't matching me. So I had to make that conscious choice. And again, it's all about taking a leap of faith, which I did, and I learned a lot from that. As harsh as it sounds, I won't ever be treated like that again. And I had to learn hard. We go through that self-discovery, and sometimes when it comes to relationships, we tend to forget who we are because we gel into that other person.
Especially certain personalities.
And then what do? You want to break free.
I felt like I learned a lot when I was single that I couldn't learn when I was married, and things I learned when I was married that I couldn't learn when I was single. So what would you tell someone who has been fighting, but their willpower is waning? They're at the point where they're just so tired and they feel like giving up.
It's all about your power, your thought process, cognitive flexibility, or what we call resilience. And instead of being trapped by unhelpful thoughts, you learn to challenge them.
Challenge the thoughts. I love that.
And we generally direct our mental energy towards solutions and possibilities. Because if we focus on how the world punished us, we're going to be absorbed by that energy. We're going to put so much brain focus onto that. And there's so many people go down that route and keep going around in that cycle and don't understand why they're in the same place.
Now, quick question on that. Would you say that it's harder for people like this to challenge the thought and think positively, or to follow that rabbit hole down towards drowning? I feel like people say, well, it's just so hard. And I remember it being hard because it wasn't in my nature. And yet, I feel like it's just as hard or harder to put that mental energy into a bad place personally, when I didn't even realize how hard I was making it. I thought, no, it's too hard to think positively. Can't do it.
Again, I wouldn't say it's so much thinking positively. I think it's more having a solution-focused approach. Because if we have a look at what we tend to do when we're in that mindset, whether it's beating ourselves up because we're not good enough for the world, or blaming the world because we're in a particular position, until we've kind of worn ourselves out and looked at every single possible scenario we could possibly get through this, if we keep going around like that, we're not going to find the answers we seek. And it isn't so much as saying, right, okay, you're in a real tough time and I expect you to sit down and bring in positivity. The last thing we're going to do is that. But at the same time, what this is realizing, okay, I've been here before. how do I keep going round in this cycle? What can I change within this moment now? Instead of being trapped and thinking, but I've been in this position before and I failed. That's because you weren't ready to learn. Until you're ready to not go down the rabbit hole of the ultimate fear or worst case scenario, and you sit, and what we do is stop. We learn to observe our thoughts. And then we question, right, okay, how can I change? What can I put in place to make a different direction than what I'm used to doing? Because we're kind of built like a computer program, so to speak. So if we're in danger, we respond in our old ways. That's what we do. That's our defense mechanism. But if we respond in that same way and expect a different outcome, we're simply not going to get that. So we have to acknowledge that we have made the wrong choices, which has got us to where we are, but make that change forward and that here and now moment of this is where I am. I've been here. I know I've done it thousands of times throughout my journey in life. And I get frustrated that I'm still in this same place. Why am I not changing? And you think about how much brain space that takes and how much resilience you have to really learn, even going down that dark way. You've got to build one hell of a resilience on that. But you think about if you could switch it the other way and just stop in that moment and think, right, okay, how can I pull myself out of this hole? If I can push myself to breaking point of that dark place and overanalyze every possible worst case scenario, you think what you could do if you switch and you think, well, okay, what can I do to take a step forward? My first step was going for walks late at night because there was hardly anyone around. So I started building my confidence. And it's the same when people go to the gym. If you want to build up your endurance and stamina, you're not going to do it within that first day. You might push yourself and damage your body. I know plenty of people who do that. But it's retraining your mind. You used to respond in the way you do. But we get to that stage when we get fed up of it and worn out by it. So we want to make that change. So we build that resilience. And then we say, okay, what can I do to make that step forward? There's always something in front of us which we're in fear of, that barrier where we're not ready to face it. And as I said earlier, sometimes we have to step across that barrier of fear to find the answers we seek. And it is one of the hardest things for any of us to do. But as you know yourself, Jennifer, when you do it, like you said, peeling away those layers and you reflect back, you look at the relief you have when you take that first step. But then when you reflect on all the years you tried the other route, and there's many people who I've known in my personal life, and me included, and my private work, how many times have we gone round in that cycle? How many times have we said, "Oh, we've done it again? But we're not ready to make that transition until we're ready to learn. So I've seen some amazing people really push themselves to breaking point until they're ready to learn. Some people have to do that to have that realization. I want to change now.
I think that point is available for everyone. Again, either here or there. Some people, they die pretty miserable. It's my goal with this podcast to shorten that time for a lot of people so that they feel inspired by the things that Garon is saying and to help you understand you don't have to suffer any longer than you choose. When you're ready to change, it comes flooding in like an avalanche. It's real, it's powerful, all the things you need will show up. You'll feel inspiration. You'll start knowing what to do, but you have to decide. And when you were describing that hole, I had this visual of a person with a tool belt and all the harnesses and things. And, oh, there's a rope here. Oh, look, it has a latch. How do I use this thing? Oh, maybe I can get out of this hole. And I think being where I was depressed was in that hole without any tools. Completely stuck. There's no way out of this. But what you teach your clients, what I teach through this podcast, what I teach people when I do sessions with them in astrology is how you tick, tools you can use that can get you out of this hole. And if you find yourself in that hole and suddenly you're like, oh yeah, I have these tools, and you start trying them, and maybe you've never tried them before. Maybe you've never swung a hammer. It's a little rough at first.
Yeah,
Or you've
yeah.
never climbed a rope, but
Mhm.
you start to try and you're like, oh wow, I made it 5 feet. And
Yeah,
that's improvement. And you start to get stronger, or you learn how to use the tools better. And it becomes second nature for you that, oh yeah, I've been here before in this hole. I know how to get out. No problem.
Yeah.
and 10 minutes later or an hour, whatever it is, in some cases, 3 months later, when my husband left me, it took me 3 months to get out of that hole. But I mean, that's pretty good for getting abandoned.
That
I mean, that
yeah.
3 months,
3 months.
that's not very long for
That's
that kind of a big kind of event. I was
just,
devastated.
just alone with that, with you saying that, it's like she generally definitely put some work in there in 3 months, and it sounds like you hit it head on. And what I added to what you said earlier, and I was kind of getting really excited about it in regards is that we find that in a spark. And I mean, it's what I say to people: when you find that in a spark, that's when the magic happens. And
Hmm.
well, with you in 3 months, you must have really hit that head on, and it's what I say to
I
people.
chose. I was like, this sucks.
Good.
This wasn't my fault. And I'm not going to let him ruin my life. And I said, God, you have 3 months to help me get through this. And after 3 months, I'm done processing. So let's get going.
That's it.
I would
I'm
wake
gonna.
up at 3 a.m., couldn't sleep. I'd go on 8-mile runs. I
Yeah.
scheduled lots of coaching appointments. I
Wow.
joined a soccer team. I
Wow.
hadn't played soccer in like 15 years, but I was like,
Mhm.
I love soccer. It'll be something that I can do with other adults that will keep me occupied.
Good
And
on
it
you.
scared me. I'm like, what if I suck? But I played on it. It was fun. I did these things that were very proactive. I was like, I will sit here for one day and be sad. And now it's work time.
Yeah, good on you. And you've learned to get it done. If you can do it, I can do it. Your listeners can certainly do it. And it's being brave to take that step out of that cycle. As you know, it's really hard. It's one of the hardest things to do. And then you're on the next stage. I'm on similar journey to yourself. We have wobbles, but it's all about maintaining it now. And years of hard work into this. And let's be honest, life hits us sometimes with real big curveballs, but once you start learning the tools to work with it, it's becoming more kind of friendly with anxiety and depression and working with it instead of kind of trying to fight
Yeah, don't
against
see
it.
him as a threat, just something you can learn from, and
Yeah.
something outside of yourself. Like I'll call it the spirit of anger or the spirit of
Hmm.
anxiety. This isn't me. This
Hmm.
is just something that I'm feeling right now,
Yeah.
or some sort of spirit that's not going to stay.
Yeah.
They've got to
Yeah.
go.
Sure. 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 And the thing is, what's powerful there, Jennifer, is that you're acknowledging it. How many times have we ignored it?
Just go away. I don't want
Yeah.
to think about it. Confronting, like you said, and observing it. I loved how you said the word observe. Don't judge it. Don't judge it. Just look at it. Make observations. As soon as you start
Yeah.
judging, that's when you start going
Yeah.
down that hole again. No
Exactly.
judgment.
Hmm.
Just look and get
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with you there.
So, is there anything else you would like to say to our listeners before we close today?
What I would like to say to people out there is when you're in that dark place, and hopefully I might be able to reach out to one of you. I genuinely was in that dark place, and one of the hardest things I ever found was reaching out for support. But I can assure you the relief you have when that one person hears you. It's even now I'm getting a bit choked up about it now
Yeah.
because it's one of the hardest things for any of us to do, as you know, reaching out for help. So you can either contact Jennifer or even myself if you need ideas, or even just send me an email just to pick my brain. If I can give you some idea to help you pull yourself out of that hole, I'm more than happy to do so. So just remember, find that inner spark and be brave.
And I'm guessing there's really nothing you haven't heard. If you think I'm the worst person on the planet, you can't possibly understand me, trust someone like Garon. He's amazing. He would love to help you. There's no depth too far for someone to reach and bring you up. And we want to. We care about you. So, how can people reach you, Garon?
They can get hold of me through my website, which is GaronGreenTherapist.com. I'm still getting up to date with all my digital media side, but you can find me on TikTok and Instagram under Garon Green Therapies. Feel free to reach out. If you've got any questions, by all means, fire me a question and I'll answer the best I can. And if I can point you in the right direction, it'll be a true honour to do that.
Awesome. Yes, please just email him. Email him, send an email, ask a question, and see if it feels right for you. Thank you again, Garon, for meeting with me this morning. What time is
Lovely.
it there in the UK?
We're 6:20 in the evening.
Oh, not too bad. You still got
No.
a few hours left before Biddy
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a fresh day for me. It's 10:18 a.m. So,
Oh wow. Well, whatever you do today, and sincerely, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I've locked this away for so many years, Jennifer. So thank you. You in the previous podcast I'm meeting so many people now who are giving me confidence. So sincerely, thank you.
If you want to go into a more deep dive into Garon's story, I would encourage you to listen to his interview on the Mindscapes and Memoirs podcast. It's on YouTube, and I'll link that interview on my website. You'll find a link to that landing page in the description. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to turn your life into something just absolutely beautiful. So, this is the Overcome Depression podcast. You've heard from Garon Green, and I am Jennifer Sterling Campbell. See you next time. If you are new to this podcast, please go watch all of the hashtag introduction videos first, and then consider downloading the Overcome Depression workbook. Links in the description. The content in this podcast is based on my own personal beliefs, is for informational purposes only, and is not intended to substitute for medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Please refer to the full legal disclaimer in the description.